Good afternoon. This is Michael Mann with Michael Mann Security Services. We put out a video last week talking about carbines and rifles in churches and got some really good responses. Thanks for the feedback. Today we're going to talk about preventative security, not responsive. So when we talk about guns, that's responsive security. Today we're going to talk about preventative security that you can implement at your church at no cost. And what that means, you just use your volunteers. So we're going to talk about three very specific physical design features. Now, I've designed these, or designed security protection programs, or physical security programs for nuclear facilities, chemical sites, private Christian schools, very affluent private Christian schools, and churches. And I have used these three physical security design features at all of these different types of facilities and organizations. So the first physical security design feature that can be used in any facility is concentric rings of protection, or what some folks may call layered security. So when we talk about concentric rings of protection, what we mean is a series of protective circles or maybe layers that you put around your church. So if you were to take your church, your address, you type that into Google Maps, and you look at that view of your church on Google Maps, you would take very specific circles, and that first outer circle is going to be the parking lot of your church. So that's the outer layer, or our outer circle of that first series. The second series, or that middle series or layer, would actually be the doors, or the external doors or windows of your church itself. So just on the exterior of the building. And then that inner layer, or that inner circle, is going to be on the inside of the church. Now the reason why we put the inner layer inside there at a church is because your assets are inside, but at the same time, because of the function of the church or the mission, people that you do not know, maybe like visitors, guests, they're able to come inside that area. So we're going to talk about the inner layer being there inside your church or inside your ministry. The idea is that you don't have to use gates, you don't have to use cameras, you don't have to use fences or any kind of barrier systems to provide those concentric rings. You just need your church security team, the body. The best example I can give you to think about this is pull up a video on YouTube of President Trump, and you're going to see Secret Service agents and other law enforcement security personnel providing those concentric rings of protection. That outer layer you will see most of the time are going to be like temporary barriers. That middle layer is going to be conducted by probably a uniformed police officer, a number of uniformed police officers. And that inner layer around President Trump is always done by Secret Service agents, and they're looking outside for very specific threats. You're going to do the same thing again with your security team. Now, what's beneficial, obviously, to implement something like this, or what makes this more beneficial would be, is if number one, you have some sort of facility vulnerability and threat assessment conducted to your church to tell you what you're looking for. And number two, train your security personnel on how to look for that, what it is they're looking for, what specific threats that they're looking for, and the actions around that threat. So that's the first physical security design feature. The second physical security design feature, and you notice I said and, not or, these work in conjunction with each other. And so that second design feature is going to be the four functions of an effective physical protection system, and that's deterrence, detection, delay, and what we call response or deny. That first function, deterrence, is going to be how your physical security program, or here, your security team members, convince the adversary, or the bad guy, that your physical protection system is going to be too difficult to defeat. And that's going to be done with their physical presence, that first layer in your force continuum. That second function, that detection piece, is discovery of an adversary event, and your physical security team, your security team does that also once they've been trained on what to look for, and of course they will report that. And the idea here is that we detect this stuff, or we detect these threats, as far away from the asset as possible, so it's out in the parking lot. That third function is going to be delay, or slowing down of adversary progress. And what that means is your security team is that delay, or that slowing down or interruption of the adversary and what you're trying to protect, which is the people inside your church. And of course, that deny feature, or that response feature are going to be very, very specific elements that provide neutralization of that threat. That doesn't mean a gun. That can be something as simple as you picking up the phone and calling someone, or your security team having the ability to stop that person, talk to that person, and if need be, call the police to take that person into custody. So think of everything from an active shooter to someone that maybe just be trespassing on your property, or somebody that you have a restraining order for, your church or someone in the congregation has a restraining order against. That last physical security function is going to be conflict avoidance, and this is very, very important. So conflict avoidance means that your security system that you have in place, like a security team, doesn't conflict with security measures you already have in place, like, say, a police officer. So if you're using uniformed police officers for traffic, make sure that your police officers understand their mission and the security team understands their mission so they don't conflict. And then the most important would be that the mission of your security team does not conflict with the organization, and in this case, the church, or the mission of the church. And what that means is whatever you're doing is not off-putting for the people that come inside. So very specifically, in my experience, locking a lot of doors, telling people they can't come into church based on what they look like, or because you've had a problem before, just shutting people out and keeping people out of the church. That goes against the mission of the church. So unless a person's been identified as a specific threat, we don't want to keep those folks out because that conflicts with the mission. So again, those three physical security features. One is going to be concentric rings of protection or layered defense. Number two is going to be those four functions of an effective physical protection program, which is deterrence, detection, delay, and response or denial. And then, of course, we talked about conflict avoidance. And the most important with conflict avoidance is going to be make sure that your security team or function does not conflict with the mission of the church. If you need more information on threat detection or something very specific about threat detection and how you implement these functions, we've got a threat detection or risk assessment process that we came up with for churches. You can send us an email at contact@Michael Mann Security Services, or at Scott M, SCOTTM, at michaelmannsecurityservices.com, and we'll send you that risk assessment or that threat assessment guideline that we've come up with very specifically for houses of worship that talk about exactly what you're looking for, very specific threats, and what the risk is of those very, very bad things that most people think of. Again, you can find us on Facebook, Michael Mann Security Services on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram, and you can find us on YouTube. And remember, it's about prevention, not response.